Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation as part of the Industry Insight webinar series. The topic this time is using legal research strategically to differentiate your firm. Speaking today will be David Curl and Roy Martin. David Curl is the Director of the Technology and Innovation Platform for the Thomson Reuters Legal Executive Institute. David supports Thomson Reuters' legal business with research and thought leadership about the legal technology and innovation ecosystem and the changing legal services industry. Prior to joining Thomson Reuters in 2013, he led coverage of the global legal information market for the research and analysis from Outsell Incorporated, tracking the industry performance and trends. He is a regular contributor to the Legal Executive Institute blog and a speaker at the legal industry events. He has a JD from the University of Minnesota Law School and a BA in history from Lawrence University. Roy Martin is a civil litigation attorney in Birmingham, Alabama. He focuses on commercial real estate, including commercial and residential real estate closings, lease negotiations, trust administration, and environmental laws. He also works in corporate compliance, including federal wetland laws and regulations, resolution of claims arising from title insurance policies, condominium conversions, limited liability companies, zoning and real estate development issues, and negotiation of development contracts, including construction contracts and owner-engineer contracts. He is a graduate of Cumberland School of Law, Samford University, and is a member of the Birmingham Bar Association, the Young Lawyers Section, and the ABA. Presentation today will be followed by a Q&A. Please enter your questions into the question box on the webinar panel on the right side of your screen. All questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We're recording this webinar and we will be sending a video and a follow-up email in a few days. We'll also post the video on our blog at www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Thank you. This is David Curl. I appreciate you all being here with us today for this session on using legal research strategically. Before my co-presenter Roy dives into some of the specific tools and features that'll be of interest to you practitioners, I want to do a little context setting here. I want to give some basic background on what's going on in artificial intelligence in the legal profession, in the wider world as well, but also how it's coming to affect much of the innovation and time-saving enhancements that are going on in legal research, but also in other parts of the legal industry today. My goal here is to demystify some of this stuff, and then Roy will take it a little further with some specific examples of how some of these concepts play out in Westlaw. When people talk about artificial intelligence, everybody seems to have their own definition. One commonly accepted definition is that AI is about getting computers to perform tasks previously thought to require human intelligence, and and you'll notice that that's not a very specific definition. It could cover a lot of things, and that's actually the way AI is. It's not any one specific technology, but it's a lot of functions and technologies that do different things. The funny thing about innovations, though, is that they seem mysterious and advanced until they're not. After that, they just are thought of as being software, and I think we're on our way there with artificial intelligence. You know, just as we used to think the World Wide Web was amazing and fascinating, and even the email before that, it's now commonplace, and we're just used to using it. It works in the background, and we don't think about it that much. And that's the way it's going to be with AI in law as well. And finally, you know, there's a lot of hype around AI, and AI, another definition, is just making computers act like those in movies. And we're actually starting to get there. And I wanted to, in a minute, run through some examples of those things. But just to get a little more specific on this stuff, the specific technologies that kind of roll up under artificial intelligence are listed on the right there. Things like inferencing engines, machine learning, natural language processing, various forms of robotics, and speech processing. Now, a lot of these have been around a long time. You know, just as an example, natural language processing has been part of Westlaw for quite a while now, and it's built into many other types of tools. They're only now being applied more commonly to different applications, and some of those applications are what you sort of see on the left there. Things like expertise automation, kind of capturing knowledge of a professional like a lawyer into some form of system, question and answering tools, robotics or chatbot type applications. Speech to text and text to speech is really important part of how these technologies are being leveraged, etc. So there's a lot of different ways and different functions. So the big point here is that there's not any single application. There's not a killer app or a big bang that's going to happen in legal. It's more that artificial intelligence technologies are going to kind of infuse a lot of different parts of our professional lives. Let's take a step back from legal, though, and talk about just where you're encountering artificial intelligence in your everyday life. If you have one of these Amazon Echo devices at home or on your desk, you can talk to it, and it'll talk back. It'll do things for you. It'll turn on music. It'll look things up. It'll turn your lights on and off. It's using speech recognition technology. If you ever work with foreign texts and you just drop them into Google Translate, you get a pretty good translation these days from a service like Google Translate, and that's using neural networks to do those translations. If you listen to music on Spotify, you get a recommended song playlist every week with music you might like based on your own preferences and the traffic and preferences of other users. It's synthesizing and mining all of that data in order to come up with a recommendation for you. If you read the newspaper or read news online, you'd probably be surprised how much of the articles and texts you are reading were actually written by machines. There's a lot of text generation applications like Quill from Narrative Science, which can take data from rows and columns and turn it into narrative text, or vice versa. And that works especially well with structured information, semi-structured information like sports results or business financial results and that sort of thing. And then finally, as you work online, you might encounter situations where you're going to a help desk of some kind, and the first step is a chat bot, some way to get answers to questions, and quite often the voice on the other end of that chat bot answering your question is a machine, not a human being that's interpreting your question in a certain context and finding answers for you. So, we shouldn't be freaked out by AI because we're already using it every day in a lot of these applications. In the legal industry specifically, I just have one quick slide to sort of give you a sense of the scope of where AI is impacting and will continue to impact the legal industry. On the left, the orange balls there describe some various types of legal tech that are employing artificial intelligence. Legal research, of course, is the subject of today's webinar. Westlaw has been using natural language process, as I said, for quite a few years. There's a number of new players that are doing different interesting things with legal research tools. Expertise automation is using AI in document assembly, but also capturing and adding human expertise to find answers, to sort of get users to a legal answer without the intervention of a live human being. E-discovery has been kind of one of the biggest footholds of artificial intelligence technologies. If you think of predictive coding in e-discovery processes, document review processes, there are many players there, and many law firms and corporations are using that technology every day in major litigation. Contract analysis, particularly in sort of large-scale contract reviews for due diligence processes, are using a lot of tools that are able to plow through large bodies of contracts, which are sort of semi-structured, semi-standardized databases, and able to extract insights and identify risks and opportunities that might be embedded in a large body of contracts. And finally, litigation analytics is another big area where legal data of the kind that we have at Westlaw, but also including dockets and other legal data, is being analyzed to sort of try to predict outcomes, to try to assess quality of outcomes, or tie particular law firms or judges to specific outcomes. There's a lot of good work and interesting stuff being done there. We're active in that space, but also a lot of other companies, some new ones. So you see that, you know, legal AI in the legal landscape covers a lot of ground. We're particularly going to zero in on the legal research space with Roy's part of this presentation in a minute. But I just wanted to close with some sort of quick lessons, or sort of, I guess you can think of this as ways to think about artificial intelligence as you sort of look around in your own work and your own practice and try to figure out how this is going to affect your practice. The first thing to keep in mind is that it's all about the data before it's about the software. It's not like there's an AI package that you can just go out and buy. Really, the starting point is identifying data sets that you have or you have access to that might contain insights that you can use AI techniques to extract and leverage. So it's all about identifying, you know, what AI does your firm or your organization have, what publicly available data is out there that might have valuable content that could be mined in different ways. Second, as I've said before, AI is not one thing, so don't go looking for, you know, a single solution. As I said, I think AI is going to start to become a part of many of the things we do, and it will eventually more or less fade into the background as well. So we won't be seeing you know, a single AI application of any kind. What I said before about, you know, AI really at the end of the day is just software. We'll get used to it. We'll start to understand it, and we'll start to know when to apply it and when it's not valuable, and it'll sort of fade into the background like many other technologies. Don't forget that what we're talking about today is legal research. That's you know, a core function of the practice of law, as is things like contract analysis. But there's also a whole business of law side where artificial intelligence is going to be valuable. Law firms and legal organizations generate lots of data that can be analyzed, including billing data and matter management data, et cetera, that can be fodder for AI. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. A lot of objections to AI are that, well, it can't possibly be 100% perfect if you're making predictions with a machine, so therefore we shouldn't use it. But humans aren't perfect either. The point is that humans plus machines doing certain tasks is better than either humans or machines alone. So I think it's that union of human expertise and the software and the technology that's the future. An important thing about all of this is that it's going to take us all a lot of time to adjust, a lot of time to get used to using data in new ways, getting used to trusting machines to make predictions and recommendations for us. And there's going to be a lot of change management and communication within our organizations before we all accept this and start to use it in the right way. And finally, in the legal industry, it's important to think of your natural partners in all of this, and clients are often a resource. Clients often have the data we need if we want to use some advanced technology, and so we need to partner often with clients on particular solutions. It's not just a matter of a law firm going off and working on their own on an AI project. So that's sort of some hasty advice or on different ways to think about this. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Roy. We will have time for questions at the end, but I'm going to let Roy dive right into his presentation as soon as I can make him the presenter here. There we go.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Roy Martin. I'm a civil litigation attorney in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm going to talk about using legal research strategically. As David was mentioning, with several Westlaw enhancements and other things that Westlaw has done, it makes legal research a lot easier. And I want to preface this by saying I know some people here have perhaps never used Westlaw before, and others are much better at doing legal research than me. So with that wide range of experience, if I'm talking about things that you already know, please just be patient with me. But here's a picture of me. Don't judge that too harshly. I went to Cumberland in Birmingham, Alabama, and I've been with Westlaw for my entire legal career. And I'm in a small 3-person firm, and in our firm, I do most of the legal research. So I'm pretty familiar with Westlaw Next and some of these enhancements I'm going to talk about. The first one is Westlaw Answers. And this is an easy and simple way to find the answer to your legal question very quickly. And anyone who's been on Westlaw Next and done some research has seen this screen. And as you can see from my screen, the jurisdiction I have is Alabama. And one thing that happens if you ever file a complaint or you're defending against a complaint, you've had someone file a motion to dismiss. So for me, it's important to very quickly find the elements of some causes of action. And what's funny about that, different cases will have different language, and some of the language you'll really like, and some of the language not so much. And I like to use Westlaw Answers for this. So I'll go through this. I've just typed into the search screen elements of conversion, and the AI of Westlaw automatically produces this list of Westlaw answers. And the first one is great. What are the elements of conversion? That's exactly what I'm looking for. So if I click that, this next screen, it comes up with this. And it cites a case from the Supreme Court of Alabama, which shows the 4 elements of conversion in Alabama. And, you know, reading that, depending on what side I'm on, I may like that case language, or I may want to do something different. What's great about this, the Westlaw Answers, is it will give you several different cases. So this is Kelly v. Connecticut. But if I just scroll down a little bit, I get this case down here. In this language, I like a lot more. And you'll probably, you know, when you do a lot of research, you'll come on cases and you'll be like, oh, I like the way the case said that. And then you'll immediately forget what it was you were reading. And so you'll have in the back of your mind, I remember one case, and you may have trouble locating it, but with Westlaw Answers, it's a lot easier. So if I click on that case, it highlights the language I'm looking for. And if I want to put this in a brief or a pleading or a response to a motion to dismiss or a motion to dismiss, I can highlight this language. And, And when I basically highlight this, this screen will pop up, and I'm going to copy this as a reference so I can use it in my pleading. And then depending on if you use Microsoft Word or WordPerfect, I tend to just right click and paste as unformatted text, and it's just right here. And if you want Westlaw to do the blue booking for you, you can, or I tend to like to do the proper blue book citation myself. So that's just one great example using Westlaw Answers to very quickly find not only the elements of conversion in Alabama, but also the language you want to use. Another example is, let's say I want to find the pattern jury instructions on something. Let's say you have an assault case, and I need to find for a jury or for a judge, for my jury instructions, the jury instructions for assault. Well, as you've seen on my screen here, I've just typed in Alabama PA, and it's automatically prompted these jury instructions. I can just click on that, and it'll take me to the Alabama pattern jury instructions, which is great. I can go click on Chapter 5, Assault and Battery. It'll come up with the elements. I can click on that again. And now it'll have all the elements here that I can highlight. I can, again, copy it with a reference. And if I'm putting this in a pleading, I just copy to my Microsoft Word. And this can just go straight into a pleading that you can file. And it's just very easy. And some of you who use Westlaw probably do this all the time, but the AI of Westlaw Answers just makes this very easy. The second thing I want to talk about is research recommendations. This is to ensure you're not missing the most relevant documents. But more for me, it's if I have no idea of what I'm trying to research. And typically your boss research assignment, and you try to fake your ignorance as much as you can and just pretend that you know what they're talking about, and you can look it up later on Westlaw. So it's this screen over here, and on the far right, you're going to see these research recommendations. And one example is, let's just say some things that are more common, the recommendations will pop up a little bit easier. But let's say you have you're just doing some research on breach of contract. And let's say you've typed that in, you've got some cases. I'm in all state and federal here. But let's just say I click on one of these cases, and the Bark and Dunkin' Donuts case in the First Circuit. Well, now you see over here, the research recommendations have popped up. So let's go ahead and click on that. And if you click on that, there's various things. This is just to kind of show you how it works and where this is on your Westlaw screen. Now, these are some examples that I've used in the past. One of these is on nationwide permits, and this is kind of an esoteric area of the law, but for anyone who's dealt with the Corps of Engineers, basically, let's say you're designing a road or doing any sort of project that's going to interfere with waters of the U.S. or, federally protected wetlands. Typically, you're going to need to go through the Corps of Engineers, but there's these things known as nationwide permits, which is if the impact area is relatively small, some of them allow you to do your project without notifying the Corps. And as some of y'all who have dealt with the Corps of Engineers or your local environmental department, you typically want to stay away from them if you can. So I got a research project to learn about these nationwide permits, and I had no idea. So I just started typing, and you can see these Westlaw answers here, but I actually just clicked enter. This is all state and federal. And what happened was I got some cases. And this language here looks pretty interesting. So I click on it and find this key site head note and just look at this. This looks interesting. So I'm going to click here and I click on it. And now we have some cases on this little topic here. And I'm just going to keep clicking. And now I get my research recommendation. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer if you're researching an area that's not as common, because it takes time for Westlaw to really figure out how they can help you. So this research recommendation looks helpful. I'm going to click on it. And now there's all sorts of helpful here things that can help direct me. So here there are 49 nationwide permits. And really, if you have no idea of a subject, you can use these research recommendations, and they're extremely helpful. Another example of these research recommendations is I was given a project on partition. And some of you have probably had a partition case, petition for sale and division. Basically, if someone has a bunch of children, they have a bunch of children, then you have a piece of property with, 1,000 people share title to it. And you can have the court order the sale of that property. This can be a pretty big deal in Alabama because judges are allowed up to a 15% attorney's fee on these cases. So a lot of attorneys will try to get a partition case because it can be a way to get fees, but otherwise it's just something that happens all the time. It's a big part of the property law. And so I just click on partition. Again, I'm on all state and federal, and Mississippi has some pretty interesting language and some cases. So I just click on one of these cases, and what comes up is I have my research recommendations. And you have some helpful topics here, and you have some cases down here where you can just learn more about partition, and Westlaw and the AI can help direct your research. And there's just all sorts of things in these research recommendations. And then once you use them, you can click on a case like this Overstreet v. Overstreet and just find out more about the law. And the third thing is snapshots. I actually use snapshots quite a bit. And this is, you can retrieve information, all sorts of things. You can look up judges, you can look up expert witnesses, different companies, get a snapshot of them. And for me, just like research recommendations, I use these snapshots quite a bit if I am unfamiliar with the subject. And the example I'm giving here is the rule against perpetuities. Anyone who's taken property, I know a lot of states don't have this, but this is the dreaded rule against perpetuities, which if you wanted me to explain, I probably couldn't explain it to you. My property professor said, hey, listen, this is just something for you to learn. But unfortunately, I was put on a case where I had to know about this rule. This is no interest shall vest, if at all, no later than 21 years after a life in interest. I probably didn't even say that right, but it's a way to prevent property from staying stagnant for many years. So we had this rule in Alabama, and it came up in a case that I was supposed to research. And my boss said, I need you to look this up about the rule against perpetuities. And trying to fake my ignorance, I just said, yes, sir, and got to it. And so you also have some Westlaw Answers here, but you have these snapshots to the right. And if you click on the snapshots, then you learn, okay, well, this is an Alabama code, which is our statute in Alabama. And you can just get to the Alabama code, and you see there's a statutory rule against perpetuities. You say, that's interesting. So then you go to it and you see there's 60 decisions. And I love going to the statutes to Westlaw gives you a nice way to search cases that are on point. And I'll go to that, and this is great. It categorizes for me the various different parts of the rule. And since I don't know anything about it, I'm going to look at the construction and application. And there's all sorts of helpful language here. That's great. And depending on what you need, you can click on these cases, and it gives you, Snapshots really gives you some direction. Another case, I don't do medical malpractice, but I had to research it. So one of the issues was medical malpractice immunity, kind of in the armed forces. There was a very esoteric and weird part of the law that I had to look up. But so I clicked on it, and you have some more snapshots. You see it's a part of, there's some US code provisions on medical malpractice immunity. And if you go there, you see this this Armed Forces United States Code annotated, and now you're learning about medical malpractice immunity, and you're seeing the relevant statutes and the relevant cases that can really direct your research and save a lot of time. The next section is on folder analysis. This can get you deeper visibility and also help you organize. I don't know how many of you out there that use Westlaw use these folders, but I use them quite a bit. Your folders are up here, and if I were to click on that, these are some of my folders. I was researching the law of unlicensed contractors, which in Alabama, you can have some pretty harsh law. If someone is not licensed, then there's a few exceptions, but basically they're not going to be able to collect if they've done work on a project. So it can be a pretty harsh statute. I've collected a few cases of exceptions, and you can actually, if you have your folder, a lot of times when you do research, you will have looked at 100 cases and you can't remember the cases that were helpful. And so when that happens, I like to put them in a folder. So one of the cases that I had was this Allstate case that I can now go look back and reference. And now I've gone back to the main screen here. And you have these kind of recommended cases and things that you can look at, recommended documents. Again, Westlaw AI is providing you with some material. So now I see this Triple D trucking case. This looks interesting. This looks like maybe an exception that may apply. So I click on this case and try to read the case. And now I get the elements for someone to, if they want to succeed on a non-licensure defense. You see there's 3 elements here. And I say, that's pretty interesting. I can, again, copy this with a reference, put it in a pleading. And here, this is the holding from the case that if you're only hauling and dumping dirt, then the licensure statute doesn't apply to you. So that can be very helpful. And then over here, one thing that Westlaw added that's very cool is your ability to add a note. So let's say I'm with my firm, and we stayed up late the night before, and we have a project with a deadline, and you have a bunch of people working on it. You're able to share notes with basically anyone. I share notes with my firm, but over here I can add a note. And this is what I want to add. I want to add this to the brief. So that note will be added. And Guy Martin is the other Martin in my firm. That's my father. And so I've added that note. And now I can share this note. And when I share the note, I've got my firm group. And so I share with the firm, and it's added. And so now everyone in my firm can see this note. We can meet on it later. And if several people are working on a project, this can save a lot of time. and I can share with the firm. The firm will have it, and that's wonderful. Now I'm back to the folder screen, and this research report is something that Westlaw has added, and it kind of gives you a report of the various cases that are in your research folder. And this is one case and kind of the summary of the case. Here's a note that was added. So these folders give you a really good ability to kind of organize your research and do more in-depth research. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the Westlaw app. And I don't know how many people have downloaded this on their phone, but for me, it's very useful because sometimes you'll be in court and you will not have brought all of your statutes or all of your cases. And, typically judges don't want you to be on your phone, so you can kind of keep it secret. But this happened to me a few weeks ago. I was actually in a case on the mechanics lien statute, and probably most of y'all know where that is. If a contractor has done work and the owner, for whatever reason, doesn't pay them, they can put a lien on the property. And the law is very complex and detailed. But I was in court defending a summary judgment, and the other attorney started talking about the mechanics lien statute and saying various things, and it didn't feel right to me. Well, I just pulled up my mobile app on Westlaw and typed in the mechanics lien statute that I knew, and it popped up for me, and I was able to talk to the judge and say, Your Honor, that's just wrong. Here's the statute, and was able to argue that successfully. Whereas if I didn't have the app with me, I would probably just sit there, like a stump on a log and not know what to say to the court. So the Westlaw app is very helpful. If you're on the road, it gives you a way to do Westlaw research basically from anywhere. So these enhancements are really cool, and the main point is to save time. And that's what this technology has done. And I've been with Westlaw my whole life, and can now do research very quickly.